Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. We're in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Union Hall training facility. Paul from Smith Paints is going to be doing a demonstration of how to apply some water-based stains. Here he is.
Is if you're doing rockscapes and you start layering color up, you can get gloss. It looks like a little bit of a plasticky look to it. Mother Nature doesn't make plastic rocks. What dictates sheen, or what's gloss? Gloss is the reflection of light off of a uniform surface. So if I put a powder, or if I put a flattening agent, how we decrease our gloss is if I break up that light reflectivity, it decreases the gloss in our eyes. I learned a long time ago that when I walked out onto a purple floor and the homeowner said, "Isn't it the greatest thing?" I don't know if purple floors were my greatest thing. I just looked at it, fantastic. And that either is fantastically great or fantastically bad, but that's what she wanted to hear. All of our colors, we try to use high-end type pigments to make it so the stability is there for you guys, especially in your type of environment out here. So I do a 4-to-1 dilution is our standard dilution. Distilled water, especially out here where your water tables start to get a lot lower. Magnesium, calcium are the things that hurt us. My resin system, as you leave it in there, it starts to have an incompatibility and it decreases the glue or my resin capability. By putting distilled in, I don't have any of the hard elements of water in there. It's neutral, so to speak, so it's nothing against it. When we're doing applications and you're out in the real world environment, and we're going to say this is close to real world, but we're still in a controlled environment. You have all these influences on you from when you're surface prep to wind, to dirt, to sands, to rain, to whatever. Try to take the variables out of the equation that could hurt you. And it's not like the stain's going to yell at you and say, "Oh, I'm not working. You put the tap water into me." I don't get to make it with brains. So we have to make decisions for these products to put them in the best place for success. It doesn't get the opportunity to say, "Hey, he's a nice guy. He tried to do it, but he put bad water into me, so I'm going to work anyways." It doesn't get to work that way. So let's always use it in the proper way. The other step that I always have to talk again, surface preparation. Surface preparation is going to be key. Correct the water is going to be key. Put yourself in success as opposed to trying to skirt and see if you can get away with something. So when you're pressure washing, that water is going to dry then. And you can put it on sort of a damp surface, but that also is going to act as a resist. So when you're done pressure washing, you want to get from like that darker wet concrete back to sort of more of that lighter gray concrete. I am going to be putting probably, and I love doing this, I'm going to be putting probably the most obnoxious, it's called yellow ochre, which is yellow iron oxide, which is a dirty, mustardy type looking color. And I'm going to put that on first. And everybody's eyes are going to look at me and be like, "That may be the ugliest thing I've ever seen." Even if I have something as obnoxious as this, and you put it down and you're out in the field, and you're like, "Oh my God, that looks ugly. I didn't like that color combination." The beauty of the stain is this is not a one-shot deal. I can start putting colors over top of it and manipulate that color to something my customer will pay me for, or you as the artisan wants to be able to achieve. Now, caveat to this is we always want to go light to dark. So I'm cheating a little bit because I'm going to be putting darker colors over the yellow. So that's light to dark. If I have to go from dark back to lighter, then we have to start changing our dilution rates. What I would recommend to you is always trying to keep it at a 4-to-1. That way, anytime you go back to a job, I did it at 4-to-1, and then your application is where you can get darker and lighter by how much you're putting it on through your application. Now today what I'm going to be showing you is application through production gun, gravity feed, and spraying it on this way. Can I use a pump-up sprayer? Vertical application is going to be a little difficult because you're going to be putting a lot on and it's going to want to run on you. I get a lot more control. If I'm doing horizontal applications, you can use a pump-up sprayer, but if I'm just flooding out surface, that surface is going to dictate to me what it looks like, and I call it cliffs, where you get a really, really dark area and then it cliffs down to light area, and it doesn't look like smooth transitions, where if I put it on with a production gun, you get smoother transitions. So that's going to be up to your artistry. This is Harbor Freight. We're not painting cars. We're doing this. We want to atomize the product. This is 14 bucks last time I saw at Harbor Freight. Let's say inflation, now we're up to 20. If you do this for 2 or 3 jobs, 4 jobs, you can even clean the tips out. But they make this is sort of a throwaway, but for 20 bucks, you're pricing that right into your job. You're not having to worry about cleaning. You're going to see I'll spray some water through it, but that's about the extent of it. So go to Harbor Freight. Use the cheaper ones because this isn't as sensitive as that beautiful fine finish on that uniform, like of a truck or your car, something along those lines. I wanted you to see this. Before I put any stain into this gun, I'm going to put water into it first. I'm going to spray it a couple times. I want enough pressure just to create atomization. The other thing that you run into, you're going to feel like you can control it by turning up your pressure. I call it blowing out your acrylic. And what I mean by that is you can atomize it so efficiently and so effectively that I actually dry my glue or my resin by mixing that much air into it before it gets onto my substrate. So you'll have this beautiful appearance, and then you'll rub it and it'll come right off onto your hands. You're like, I did my surface prep, everything was fine. So that's where it comes in. Turn down your pressure. I'll tell you about 10 to 15 pounds of pressure. Some of your machines aren't going to have it. It's probably that first quarter. We don't need a lot of pressure because I'm at the viscosity basically of water. I don't have something like a latex paint where I have to push a lot of it through. So bring your pressure down, and that way you're limiting your amount of overspray. You shouldn't get more than anything than 4 feet up. Surface preparation. Thomas's English muffin. We want everything out of the nooks and crannies. If it dries, during my surface preparation, if my cleaning material dries, where's it going? Back into my nooks and crannies. If I'm using a mop, all I'm doing is just moving around stuff into other nooks and crannies that have an issue. So that's where that pressure washing, that's where we want to remove the contaminants on the substrate. And I'm doing that Thomas's English muffin. My finger is the 0-degree rotating nozzle, getting things off of the substrate. We want to extract off of the substrate. We just don't want to move it around. Does that make sense? So that surface preparation, as well as inside, is just as important for this type of stain application as well. All right, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to open up some water, and I'm going to test. Do I like my spray pattern? Do I like what I'm seeing? And that's just going to be simply, and you see how I don't have a lot of overspray. I'm able to control my substrate, but I'm not billowing clouds. That means I like what I'm seeing. So I'm going to take my yellow. I'm doing a 4-to-1. So I am going to put 16 ounces of water, shake this up, 4 ounces of yellow ochre. I always like putting my water in first because as I'm pouring my stain into my water, it's already starting to mix itself in. I don't need any agitation with drills. You can, but this is as I just did this, I just poured it in. I'm just stirring around like that, and it goes right into solution for me. So it's a very easy application that as I'm stirring, that becomes my ready-to-use product. So to create uniformity of color, you're going to want to mix it. And maybe, let's say, even after lunch, like every couple hours, you want to put it up in the suspension to make sure that you have good application. Now, what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to be going back and forth in a linear pattern. I'm not just going to back and forth like I'd spray a car because I don't have a uniform absorbency. So if I start getting overlap, I can start getting lines. So I'm going to do somewhat of a random pattern. I always want to start at my bottom and work my way up. Reason for that, if I get any type of overspray or if it starts dripping down, if it drips down onto itself, I can take my rag and I can dab it. If I spray at the top and it drips down onto substrate that hasn't been stained, we're back to that English muffin again. It's going to grab in there and you're going to start seeing drip lines and things of that nature. So I'm just going to start down here. Oops. So by my application, I have a little bit more, a little bit less, and then as it's using absorbency of your substrate, that's where I'm going to get that variation of color. This product, I'm not trying to get to this monotone painted appearance. That's not what we're trying to achieve here. Perfect drying conditions, 50% humidity, which I think is basically all the time here, if not less. Temperature roughly around 72 degrees, and airflow are perfect drying conditions. So you're seeing, as we're looking at it, it's already starting to dry down on it. If we had some sun on it, it'd even dry quicker. Now, I've always been accused, and I'll be the first to admit, I have a heavy hand. So, well, I think your hands are going to be a little bit better on how you blend it in with each other. But you can see I can go dark all over the place. And then as you start seeing that dry stack wall, it's mimicking what Mother Nature's going to give you. She doesn't give us just solid color, one color rock. She lets all those minerals and deposits and everything influence that color. That's what we're trying to do here.
We got a stamp square right here in the front.
Oh. There's an extension tip. If you have a ton of square footage, there's an extension tip that gets pressurized here. Regular just extension tips, if it shuts off here, you got all that material that wants to bleed out. So it's got to be a pressurized tip at the bottom. But that way, if you're doing square footage, you're not acting like a hunchback and you're just doing this the whole time. At least it'll help you out with regards to your physical nature and being able to do application. What you're getting here is going to be almost 98%, 99% of what you're going to be getting. Yep. Now, if you put a solvent-based acrylic over that, then it's going to pop your color and it's going to create a little depth. So you'd be able to see where you sealed and you didn't seal, and that'll have a little influence on color. But the color itself, once it's there, she's not moving. She is what she is. What was just asked is the product in the bucket different, just a different color. So that's desert sand, that's CF250, bark brown is CF280, just a different color, but the same color floor, the same product, the same thing, just a different color.
Thanks for the show.
Enjoyed
Great.
it. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate you coming through.
Nice presentation. You guys have a good one.